Oh well. Okay, so sorry that I just now thought to record. Giving an example of a descriptive study is what I'm doing right now, and how it can actually be really important and useful. And I've given the background that nutrition marketing didn't exist, and now I'm starting to see nutrition marketing on the front of labels. And my son saw a can of SpaghettiOs that he wanted, and it had a Batman on the front of it. And so, he wanted to get that. And then I was like, no, we're not going to get that right now. And my other son, who could read, said, but mom, we got to get it. It's a good source of protein. But sure enough, Batman had a little, bubble like he was speaking. He said, I'm a good source of protein. And so it was just this moment where I was like, wow, how often is this starting to be used? And is it impacting? I want to know if I first need to know if it's being used because it's brand new. So we did I had amazing resources and people, but we did a study where we looked at all grocery stores in the town, and I can't remember off the top of my head how many there were, but all of the grocery stores, and we counted on every product how often nutrition marketing was being used and what kinds of messages were being used, and then what the nutrient composition was on the label, of the product. So that article, all it did was give description. It's just what kind of stats do you run with descriptive? Ricky, what kind of stats do you run with descriptive?
What kind of stats?
Yeah, what kind of stats could you include in an article that article that I put out? What do you think?
Are you asking specifically what kind of stats or the label of the kind of stats?
Yeah, like what kind of stats? So as a descriptive study, what kind of stats would you be presenting in that research article?
I mean, when I think about it, I think about people in a clinic being studied for something. So I'd be describing their heart rate that I'm measuring or something. Is that
Okay.
what
So
you're
in the
asking?
in the label study that I'm describing, like what
Uh-huh.
kind of stats do you think I would have put into that paper? What could you put there? I'm going to switch from you to Rebecca now. So if you keep thinking, that's good. Rebecca, what kind of stats could I have put in that article? As a descriptive study, what can we report?
So I have like an example of what I think descriptive study is, like a customer survey.
Okay, so in the
You
one I'm
can,
giving you, in
okay,
the now we've gone into the grocery stores, and we've I remember I was looking to see the nutrition marketing that was happening on the food labels that I was describing. What kind of stats do you think I could have put in that article?
Like
This is
percentage
basic.
of added sugars.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
percentages, right? So you're talking about frequencies. It's just, it's
oh,
basic. So I'm not trying to trick you
I
guys, I promise. It seems basic, that's because it is. So yeah, you're like, how often is this occurring? So, what percentage of all the products was their nutrition marketing, right? And then of that nutrition marketing, what percentage of that was on products that were high in saturated fat? Or what percentage of the products were marketed toward kids? And then there's a lot I could actually send you the article. There's a lot you have to do. So it is a descriptive study, but it actually ends up being pretty complex. Now, something of that scope, um, that could definitely be a dissertation, right? So descriptive doesn't just mean that it's not useful or that it's a throwaway concept. Um, so that was what I was going to say about. So um, I am going to go in and look for this. What I want to do while I go find these slides is I am going to first in the chat, will everybody write down what type of article design, excuse me, what kind of design you chose to do with your topic area. So just in the chat right now, let me know who did what. Okay, comparative cross-sectional. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, um, All right. Am I missing something? Bryce, did you have one? And
Yes,
Rebecca,
sir.
did you
I'm
have one?
typing it right now.
Okay. How about you, Rebecca? Did you have one? Did you put in? Okay. Just Rebecca. All right. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to let it assign you guys. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you guys in rooms for about 10 minutes. And most of you will, well, two rooms will have two people in it. And one room will have three. And what I want you to do in your room is I want you to share your study that you designed with each other, talk about it, make sure to ask questions and explain to each other in a nice, safe, quiet, small environment. Help your partners. That way, if there's anything that doesn't make sense, maybe this is a great time to make adjustments. And then we're going to come back and you're going to be sharing in just a little bit, but maybe with an extra breakout room in there. Okay, so 10 minutes to share with your partner what research design you did. And then we'll come back and this will give me time to pull up the slides without it talking to you. Okay, so I've created the rooms. I'm going to put Bryce and, oh, this is interesting. Who decide to put with who? Okay, so you are there. And then I'm going to put you right here. And then I'm going to put, um, and all right. So I'm opening rooms. I'll pull you back. I'll be here. You can come in and ask a question. Um, does somebody, yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. Go ahead and go to your room. Let me know if you have questions. Let me set the timer 10 minutes. Let's set the timer. Hey, Jason. I love you. This, okay. Oh, I can do this. Oh.
This lecture,
Did it again.
in this lecture, we're going to talk about non-experiential design. So research using the term
Hmm.
non-experiential research. This lecture is going to talk about non-experiential experience. But
Why can't I? Wait, linear. Okay, got it. I just realized I'm still being recorded. Can I pause?
Hey.
Hey. All right, cool. I think we lost somebody. Okay, there they come. All right, I have a bunch of slides and I figured out what was going on, so that was great. So I'm going to go actually from the beginning. I will post these same lectures that were actually recorded over, so you can watch them at your leisure later and actually hear a lecture with it if you want to. You can always put it on super speed, and that way not let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to do it without the.
Hi, Dr. Kobe. Can I quickly ask a question?
Of course. Yes, please.
Okay, so for my research design, I did a poster. I don't know if
Okay.
that's the expectation for this research. I just want to be sure if I'm right on track or I'm
Yeah.
just doing something
Oh,
else.
yeah. No, you're fine as long as you didn't spend a ton of time on it. Because actually, let me close this. Because yeah, a poster sounds very involved. So as long as you're not, burning up time that you don't need to be burning, any way that you want to present that as a slide, or a poster is fine with me. Okay. All right. I'm moving this over just so I can see better. I'm actually not going to hit go because it's still being annoying. So basically, if you watch this one, I'll talk a little bit about why we do research, which we talked about last class. That fundamentally we're trying to increase and get more knowledge. And that could be theoretical, it could be practical, maybe we're developing new tools. And I know I'm not hitting slideshow. Sorry, guys. You'll just have to see it the way it is, for ease. So another thing to think about is that when people think about research, they sometimes are thinking about the more basic science side where it's happening in a lab, a wet lab, or bench science, basic science. Those are all terms that used to be used or could be used. Whereas for many of us who are in applied fields, our lab is the community, or it's in some location outside of where we traditionally work. It could be in a home, it could be on a soccer field, it could be all sorts of places, it could be a grocery store. And so we'll talk a little bit about that quantitative versus qualitative as we go throughout the semester. But the main thing that we talked about today, to see it in a slide, is there are two main types of research. There's experimental and non-experimental. So you've got the randomized or the quasi-experimental, as we talked about earlier. And the difference there is, can the researcher actually randomize the participants into which treatment they're getting, whether they're getting a treatment or control. And then there is something that the researcher is manipulating, and that's what makes it experimental. Whereas non-experimental that we're talking about today is going to be the three that we're starting, they're reversed order, apologies, but descriptive that we started with, and then comparative, and then associational, which you can also, some people say correlational, some people say associational means the same thing. So that was the first whole lecture one. That's just exciting, right? This one, I just want to go over these really quickly just to make sure that we've heard these. Obviously, what's variable? People talk about their variables. It's the characteristic, but the fundamental, what makes it a variable is in the name. It has to actually it has to vary. So if it's not a variable, we would call it a constant. So that is actually a term that might be new, and I don't think that's in my thing that you're filling out. But fundamentally, to be a variable, it has to have different values associated with it. So we talked before about independent, that strong, independent woman can make a change. And these are, they can be predictors, the antecedents, so things that come before or after, presumed causes of, well, no, comes before, because presumed cause of or influences something to happen. So we can have two different types of independent variables. I can slow down anytime you want, but you just have to break it and tell me to slow down because I don't know what I'm going over that's old and boring and what's new and good to hear about. So if it's active or attribute, so active is what's being manipulated by the researcher, and it has to be assigned after the study begins to make it active. Because if it's something that was determined before the study started, then it's not an active independent variable. The study has to actually have the researcher actively, again, the words, define themselves, actively assign the participants to that treatment. So it's not ex post facto. It's not the same thing. Oops, sorry. The attribute is it's pre-existing, so it does not change because you're doing the study. If the study only has the attribute independent variable, then there's nothing that's being manipulated. The researcher is not changing anything, so it's fundamentally a non-experimental study. So a little bit more about the difference between variable and level. So the level is the values within the variable. So you could have I used to use gender as a okay, how about we're going to use the variable could be we could say educational status, college educational status, and you could have two levels, and you could have a graduate level. You could have that participant could be a graduate student or an undergraduate student. So there are two. You could have two levels within your variable. The variable being the uh, college status, whatever you end up naming. Okay, so if you have a two-factor, you've probably heard people talk about two-factor designs or factorial designs. Just remember, for all of this, if you ever have questions, either write them down and look them up later or ask me, because you very likely will be asked to explain this yourself very shortly. So this would be a study that has at least two independent variables. So two different things that could be causing the change in the outcome that we're interested in measuring. Remember, the dependent variable is the outcome. The independent variable is the one causing the change. I know this is very basic. Now, extraneous variables. And although I say this is very basic, for some people, there'll be new terms that they're not completely comfortable with. Like, for instance, covariate. If somebody says, what's your covariate? That's talking about something that's not your independent or your dependent variable. So you can have either control variables or covariates, and those are things that may vary, and they could still be influencing that outcome or the dependent variable, but they're not the point of what we're trying to study. But we do want to be aware of them. We want to be able to control for them, but they're not the interest of the study. So that is, let's see more about variables. Remember, we can have nominal variables. Nominal, sort of, it's in the name, but because it's name, something that you can label. Who have I not called on lately? Sam, can you give me a example of a nominal variable?
Hair color.
Cool, nice. So it can be brown, or it could be silver, or it could be, so you can name it, right? Now we also can have with things that can be put into ordered or unordered. So for instance, hair color would not be put in order, right? That doesn't make sense to have something that's, whereas if you had height, that is something that you could put, that would be in order, that you could put in order, and it would make sense to put it, because you can put anything in order, but does it make sense to put it in order? And then continuous, when somebody talks about a continuous variable, give me, I can't remember who I've called, I'm not called on lately. Bryce, give me an example of a continuous variable.
Couldn't weight be a continuous variable?
Yes. Yes, it could be a continuous variable. Yep. So it's going to have theoretically, and that's an interesting theoretical concept, because yes, weight can be continuous variable, but technically it should be an infinite set of values within a range. But I guess you can, that gets into that magic curtain of math, because you could always split. Anyway, you could keep dividing down into smaller and smaller increments there. Anyway, all right. I don't think there's another time in the class where I'm going to talk about hypothesis. And it's an interesting issue in research of whether you have hypothesis driven research. And there's some like funding agencies that require it to be hypothesis driven. There's sometimes where you might have for your committee might require you to have a hypothesis, or they want to know what's your hypothesis. Often you can have a study that you hadn't thought about the hypothesis, but if you take just even a second, there's something obvious you could say about it, right? Because it's a predictive statement about the relationship between variables. So recognize that you can make a research question. So somebody give me, let's see, maybe I should be going in order. So I am going to do that as long as they don't change. Seems like it changes what order you guys are in for me sometimes. Okay, I'm going to hope that this doesn't change now that I've pulled it out to there. Oh, no, it just changed. So Mamoon, can you, from your research study today that you're going to be presenting, can you tell me your research question?
Yes. So my research question is association between Mediterranean diet adherence and depressive symptoms among college students.
Okay, so turn that into a question though, because that was more of a title.
So the research question can be: is higher adherence to a college adapted Mediterranean diet associated with lower depressive symptom severity among college students?
Okay. So the next person is in my reading across is Sam. So Sam, can you take, and you may have to ask Mamoon to say it over again, because Mamoon speaks very quickly too, is the other thing. I think not too long ago, I first figured out that Mamoon talks a little quieter. So we're going to have to work with Mamoon to project a little theater training in there. And you do, one of my bad habits is I talk very fast. I like talking fast. You guys, there are fewer and fewer people that complain about people talking fast, which I love. But tell me if I'm talking too fast and I will slow down. Mamoon, you have to slow down just a little bit maybe and say it again. So for Sam's benefit, because now Sam is listening, because Sam, I'm going to be asking you to take that research question and turn it into a hypothesis. So Mamoon, tell us your research question again.
So my question is higher adherence to a college adapted Mediterranean diet associated with lower depressive symptom severity among college students?
Okay, Sam, can you turn that into a hypothesis?
You said is higher adherence to college adapted Mediterranean diet associated with depression symptoms?
Yeah, with lower depressive
Okay.
symptoms. Yeah.
Okay. I would hypothesize that a higher adherence to the Mediterranean diet would be associated with fewer depressive symptoms.
Yep. So it is that simple. That's all I'm asking us to do. So, Sam, tell us your research question.
Okay, let me pull her up.
Everybody, pull up your research questions. You know I'm coming. I'm gonna be coming your way.
Okay. I will explain my topic when I get to my presentation because I may not know what it is. The research question asks, how does body image differ between young men engaging in the looks maxing movement versus young men participating in general online fitness culture?
Wow. Okay. So, Meg, that's a challenge. You now turn that into a hypothesis, please. Oh, you muted, but you can also ask Sam to repeat her question. I wish this one thing I wish Zoom would do is make it to where the person who's hosting can unmute people for them. But
Sorry about that. I thought I was muted. That it was about looks maxing versus general online, general health fitness community, right?
Yeah, and I was measuring how does body image differ between the two.
Not perception of body image, just the actual like.
Yeah, I guess you could say perception. That would
I
probably
think,
be accurate.
well, I think body image is fundamentally perception, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So I
Interesting.
hypothesize that those in the looks maxing community uh have a more negative body image reflection of themselves, pushing them to be more aggressive in their ways of transforming their body, which puts them in the looks maxing community.
So again, for both of you guys, and that it probably happened because this is a good example of if you can simplify. And so when you're trying to give an elevator presentation, which elevator speech or whatever means that you've got, between floor 5 and 15, you just happened to step on the elevator next to Oprah Winfrey. She's like, "Oh, you're in research. I want to give you some money. What do you do?" Okay, now you got a few floors to be able to tell, right? You want to be able to just say it clean, say it straight, take home message. So the more you can simplify but still keep the same information, the stronger the pitch is going to be. So, Sam, I want you to take another turn and try to simplify your research question a little bit. Make it a little bit more shorter, straightforward. See what you can do. Try again.
I don't know how else to shorten it. I feel like I'm like
Okay. Marissa, oh gosh, I can't. So Sam, put yours in the chat. That's probably the best way to do it. So type it into the chat or copy and paste into the chat for everybody. And Marissa, I'm coming to you next. I do like this. And so Marissa, you're going to read what Sam is going to put in there.
I mean, I think
And
technically you could like shorten young men engaging in looks maxing to just like looks maxers, but yeah. I love your thoughts, Marissa.
yeah. Um, And I guess one of the things I'll help a little bit, Marissa, and is one of the things is that when you say how does, that is a broader, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's going to be a broader, more complex question, right? Whereas if you said, it does body image differ? I know that's just a one word difference right there, but it's going to be, think about that actually has a yes no answer, right? So it becomes very simple.
Yeah, I thought it was like you're not supposed to ask like a yes or no question, but I may be wrong.
In this case where I'm trying to simplify it,
Yeah.
I want to take it into that, I'm just trying to make it easier to hear. So that's why I want to take it to a simplified instead of the more complex how.
I gotcha.
So does body image differ between? Because in some ways, the other thing is that you can do, gosh, and this gets into grant writing, because if you had different phases, you can't have your phases contingent on each other, because then if the first phase doesn't work, then the rest can't happen. So you don't want to write it that way. Whereas in research, I think it makes sense that you first would want to know, does body image differ? So it kind of it almost helps indicate where you want preliminary research, either from previous researchers or you doing a pilot test and some of your own preliminary research. If you were writing grants. Sorry, I took this all the way from most basic descriptive to let's talk about grants. Marissa, did you come up with any ways to make this easier? What else? What other words can we help?
The hypothesis could be that there's a
Well, we're not
there's a
to
significant.
hypothesis yet. I'm just trying to get the research question down a little bit.
Okay.
Make it a little more straightforward. I'll even leave the how does. So we could say, and I'm going to be typing it out, sorry, that's what I'm looking over. Among young men engaging in online, what do we call that? Engaging in social media. Can I just say that? And it's interesting because social media.
I don't think so. Just as like I mean, if we're comparing look maxing and social media, for sure not. Those are different things, right, Sam? I mean,
Right. Well, and that's maybe where it's getting confusing. In that, so Sam, the question that's being posed to you right now is specifically for these groups, what would they be? It's these are groups that are interacting in online social media, both of them.
So, yes, they're both on social media, but and I feel like this is maybe like it would be helpful to explain like what looks maxing is. So, looks maxing is a growing viral online movement that is targeted specifically at young men, and the goal is for young men to achieve quote maximum attractiveness. And this isn't done through kind of more healthier, quote unquote, simpler means of like personal self-care and grooming and a higher diet quality. It's these are extreme dangerous measures that men engage in order to looks max, and they range from a strict calorie deficit, disordered eating behaviors to like illicit drug use and misuse of GLP-1 drugs, breaking facial bones. So that's looks maxing. And then just online, and this is where I was talking to my breakout room about I would probably need to be more specific about online fitness culture because that's very vast. But just general kind of more like fitness influencers or just young men engaged in fitness content online that doesn't look smacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What is, take a look at that and see what you, does that still get at what you're looking at? So among young men engaging in social media or on social media, maybe I should say, among young men on social media, how does body image differ between those focused on looks maxing compared to those focused on general fitness? Is that what you're still saying?
Yeah,
I'm
because
not sure.
with young men engaged on social media. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that makes it any cleaner as a thing.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Okay. Yeah. So Meg, can you take that and turn that into I can't remember what we were doing. Sorry, into a hypothesis, please.
Sorry, I'm just like giving it a good read.
That's good.
I'm so sorry. I know this is very niche. I feel really bad.
Oh,
No, don't feel bad at all.
it's cool. It's different. I like it. Um, Body image perceptions of those who looks max are more severe than those involved in general fitness. I feel like severe is kind of broad, but I don't, yeah, it's like the idea of like how do people perceive body. I'm not adding to the hypothesis. I'm trying to like explain why I chose.
Yeah, and I guess the question uh is body image can you say lower or higher body image? How is body image
Right.
measured like that?
Like what, yeah, the measurement, like,
I would say like better or poorer.
so I would say poorer then. That would be my word. Body image is poorer in those focused on looks maxing compared to those. focused on general fitness.
I have a question for Sam. So, when we use the word body image, is it always like a negative word, or like maybe it can be a positive something, or like sometimes negative, or like always negative?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a neutral measure. Like it's not like inherently, you know, bad or good. It's just a measure of like, I mean, Dr. Colby, like you're gonna know way more than me,
Right.
but
No,
like,
it's I think the word, and that helps. I think the word healthy body image is what we use. So I think instead of poor, it could be negative, or you could say less healthy, um, if that's more descriptive. Um, instead of poor body image, so less healthy body image, maybe. Those are all things that help you. If this were really your project, this would help you with lots of questions that you have to think about as you develop the project. And remind me, Sam, is this this is your dissertation work?
no, I mean not like
Okay,
necessarily.
I encourage you, just for you, because that makes this course really useful. I encourage you to, and for the next weeks, to be actually trying to work within the same research questions that you would have. So that way it'll just be more, applicable to where you're going. It's just double dipping. You don't have to. It just makes your dissertation proposal that much more developed. Even though it won't be the exact studies you would be doing with your research question, it still keeps you thinking about your area more specifically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't remember exactly where we are, but I think Meg, tell us your research question.
My research question was, do athletes who use e-health applications have better diet quality than athletes who do not use any e-health applications?
Okay. Marissa, turn it into a hypothesis.
Yeah, just make sure I got that right. Your research question is, do athletes who use eHealth have higher diet quality?
Yes.
So the hypothesis that athletes who use eHealth do have higher diet quality.
Mm-hmm. So athletes who use e-health have higher diet quality than athletes who do not use e-health tools. Yep. Cool. All right, Marissa, your research question.
Yeah, my research question is that are there differences in diet quality between undergraduate students who have participated in a study abroad and those who have not?
Cool. So, Ricky, turn that into a hypothesis, please.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Of course. Are there differences in diet quality between undergraduate students who have participated in a study abroad program and those who have not?
There will be, sorry, and this would be my hypothesis. I think
Yep.
if I'm forming a sentence right in my head, there will be a significant difference in the diet quality among, I think it was graduate and undergraduate.
See, this is wonderful. Okay, I love it. And see, you can be like, I get more excited when there's an opportunity to provide. So the difference here, though, Ricky, is you have to provide a prediction. A hypothesis is going to provide the prediction of what you think is going to happen for the outcome. So you actually say what you think you're going to find.
Was it
So
between undergraduate and graduate students who have both traveled abroad?
Just undergraduate students.
Undergraduate who have not and have traveled abroad.
Yes, who have studied abroad.
study abroad.
Yeah, yes. Just sorry, yeah, studied abroad. Yeah, the diet quality of undergraduate students who have studied abroad will be superior to that of undergraduate students who have not studied abroad.
We'll probably use the word higher.
Yeah, no, it's like I am not a like
I
visual
know.
talker, which
I know.
doesn't make
No,
sense
you
at
did
all, but
great.
if
It was
you
just
know
a
what I
funny.
mean, like
Oh no, you did great, and it was correct. It just made me
okay.
laugh because superior has like a connotation.
No,
That's funny.
definitely. I that would have been my first draft and I would have reworked it.
Yes, it all is first draft on here, definitely.
Oh yeah.
All right. So Ricky, what's your research question?
Um, okay, so I do, I'm gonna post it in the little chat. It's
Okay.
not long by any means. Um, how is food insecurity associated with depression, anxiety, and burnout among graduate students?
Okay. So, Rebecca, can you turn this into a hypothesis?
Okay, I'm reading through.
Mhm.
I will say, Dr. Colby, it was really
Mhm.
actually helpful because I see what you mean. I thought I was predicting there will be a difference, right? Not predicting what the difference will be.
Mhm.
That's a pretty eye-opening distinction, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay, I think my hypothesis would be food insecurity is associated with depression, anxiety, and burnout amongst graduate students.
okay. So again, I'm going to ask you to take that to another step to be it's predictive. So those with, so it's graduate students with more severe food insecurity are
Will
more likely to
to
what?
experience depression, anxiety, and burnout. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So here's the next question I'm going to add on, and I might go back, but I probably won't. Um, in that, what is the dependent variable or variables?
Think graduate student,
Those are participants, but they're not the, let's see, I'm
food
going to move down. Bryce.
insecurity. I think it's
So,
food
so is food
insecurity.
insecurity the outcome or is it the cause?
Is the cause.
Okay. So
And
if it's a cause and a strong independent woman causes the change, then that would make food insecurity the independent variable.
yeah, food insecurity is independent variable.
Okay. So what's the dependent variable or variables?
Depression, anxiety, and burnout.
Perfect. Yep. That's exactly right. All right. So Rebecca, um, tell us your research question.
Okay, my research question is, what is the current food safety knowledge among college students in under-resourced country?
Okay. And Bryce, can you turn that into a hypothesis? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Could you repeat that one more time?
What is the current food safety knowledge among college students in under-resourced country? And how do social, demographic, or environmental factor influence their proficiency? I think I'll need to type it.
Maybe you've really got, yeah, you've got two different research questions going there. Um, so the second part is actually what's going to make it easier for Bryce to give us a hypothesis. But what can you give us there, Bryce, as a hypothesis?
Is it possible for you to type it or post the question real quick?
Yeah, I think she's, and you can always copy and paste it in there too. You don't have to type it out. And as she does that, I'm gonna go roll all the way back up to I can't remember if Sam went first because I think you moved when you turn off your camera. It moves where you are in the list. But no, Mamoon went first, right? So Mamoon, um, and you'll see what when she brings it up. Yep, she's brought it up. I'm going to be asking you about research design in just a second for those questions. So start thinking research design while Bryce turns this into a hypothesis.
So I guess you could kind of, I guess, flip that second question and say that demographic and environmental factors will influence college students' knowledge or current knowledge of food safety.
Yep. And I wanted to, and so again, we're going to take it just a step further into that predictive part. So what would you predict that outcome to be? Not just that there are differences, but tell us the direction of those differences in your
Like
hypothesis.
increased knowledge of demographic or environmental factors will influence the proficiency of food safety knowledge in college students.
I was a little confused by the first part of what you said, because I guess I normally would think of the socio-demographic as like somebody can have a higher socio-demographic or a lower, which just feels icky, actually, just to put it that way. But so it, to me, it makes it, I guess I'm more comfortable, it's interesting, thinking of framing that as those who have more affluent background and higher levels of education, as opposed to just saying higher and lower socioeconomic, demographics, even though that's what we've done forever is talk about low socioeconomic versus high. It just feels, I don't know why, but anyway. So now that I've said that, what was the prediction? Those with higher socioeconomic status, what are you predicting?
Yeah, I guess those with higher socioeconomic or environmental status will have an increase in their proficiency and knowledge of food safety among college students.
That's what you would be predicting theoretically in a hypothesis, right? So, what I thought was interesting is I can see two different research designs could be happening in the same study. Talk to me, we're still within our what we're talking about today with our non-experimental designs. What do you see could be the different research designs here?
I think for the first part, what is the current food safety knowledge? I think this will be like descriptive study.
Yes.
So yeah, so like finding the frequency or like the mean median. And for the second part, I think it's observational study and like correlational or associational
Right.
study. Yeah.
So it's because once you're comparing groups, right? That's a different type of that comparison going on with groups. Okay, cool. Bryce, I think you're our last up, I think. And so give us your research question.
Yeah, sure. So my research question is, does treatment with GLP-1 agonist affect bone density in adults?
Okay, cool. So Mamoon, can you turn that into a hypothesis?
Can you please repeat that? Any possible, please type here.
Yeah, here I got it in the chat. It's does treatment with GLP-1 agonists affect bone density in adults?
I would say it does affect, but I'm not sure like if I can say it in different way.
Right. So now we want to predict in what way it does, because we're not
So
just saying there's a relation.
yeah, I would say like it positively affect the treatment positively affect the bone density in adults.
Oh, cool. So your hypothesis would be those who receive GLP-1 treatment have higher bone density.
I'm not sure I understand what is GLP-1 agonist is.
Okay, cool. That's very fair. And so again, yes, and you'll hear more as Bryce goes throughout the semester. So I won't spend a lot of time there. That is a great example of how you really need to know the literature to be able to develop a good hypothesis, because your hypothesis should be based on everything that's come before, right? So that's a great example there. Sam is next. What in the hypothesis that I will tell you, Mamoon, I would expect it to be opposite, but that's okay. Bryce, am I close enough on the literature to know that I would probably flip that in terms of hypothesis? I'd probably say those who've had GLP treatment would have lower bone density. Is that
That's what I would predict, I guess,
yeah,
most
yeah,
of what I've read so far. But
yes,
if you've
I'd
heard different,
agree.
I'm open to
Nope,
it.
that's why I was going to go ahead and put that out there. That I agree. And like I said, Mamoon, you'll get to hear more about it throughout the semester. So Sam, what is the independent and dependent variable in that hypothesis?
I am reading the question. Bone density is going to be the dependent variable, and then use of GLP-1s is the independent variable.
Correct. That's right. Excellent. Okay, cool. So now you're kind of seeing how we're using what y'all are doing. Let me flip through the rest of these slides real quick. So as we were making a hypothesis, we go into the we can be looking to see if there's a difference between or an association between, or we're just describing something. So that's why when I asked Mamoon to talk to me about what what kind of design, you can hear the design within that hypothesis can tell you a lot about what kind of design you're going to end up using. And I think there's only one more here. Where just as a review, just to hear it, the aim is what you hope you're going to do, whereas objectives are how you're going to do it, and the goal is something is more long term. You've heard that before, but hearing it again does not hurt. Let me see if I can get back down to, oh, this is the one I need. Okay, cool. So for today, we're going over the non-experimental designs. So we're talking about comparative, associational, and descriptive, although really should flip it. Descriptive should be first. And we talked about it at the beginning that an experimental design has something that is the researcher is actively modifying, right? Is the treatment or the experiment that's being done. So, and then we talked about active and attribute variables, right? Independent variables. In a non-experimental design where you don't have the researcher actively, doing something to their participants, that means you're not going to have an active independent variable. You're going to have an attribute independent variable. So this is also not going to really tell us causality. That's why the RCT is the gold standard for causality. However, with really good research design and with more advanced statistical analysis that we have now, we are much more confident in having some inference toward causality. You still see how many words I'm, kind of it's covering your rear. Is what we do. Think about it. Often when we're writing as a scientist, you want to pretend you're a lawyer and you're making a statement to the court that somebody could not deny, right? So you can say aliens may have come down and moved Mr. Brown's cow, because that's possible, right? So think of yourself as kind of a lawyer as you write in scientific. So in this case, again, causality, what caused Mr. Brown's cow to get moved? If you had an RCT, then you would have definite answer. But if you have the well-designed study with that's non-experimental but has really good stats, you can talk about causality a little bit. Okay, I know that was weird. Mr. Brown's cow, right? He can go moo. Anybody remember that kid's book? He can go moo, can you? So descriptive. In descriptive, if we're talking about frequencies, we're talking about percentages. We're working with one variable at a time. You can actually present lots of different variables, but you're only going to be giving the number for one at a time. You're not going to be comparing between groups in descriptive. So you can have lots of different variables, but you're going to be giving the averages, the percentages. You can present it as a histogram, frequency distributions. All of those are stats that you can do with descriptive research. And you can do a little bit more complex where you do a crosstabs. And again, it's going to give you like the percentage within this kind of the group characteristics. So what percentage of women who have obesity also have red hair? I'm sorry, I'm looking for something that's totally silly there. So that just gives you, so in other words, you can run a chi-square on things. Sometimes is a quick way that I do it. Crosstabs and chi-square, same thing. And most of the statistical packages, to where you can then look at the percentages in the boxes and report on those percentages, is just a way that we tend to, get to that data. So if we're talking about associational, this is where we're going to have at least two variables. But we're not trying to influence them. There's no manipulation of the variables. There's no, experiment going on. So it can be continuous, or it can have many ordered categories, but they're all going to be, you're going to have a single group. Now this is where it gets the it upsets you a lot. I know, it's so scary. Come here, Cora. This is where you have more of an art and more control and decision making, which can be really stressful. But when we talk about the independent and dependent variables for associational work, we often will call them predictor variables and criterion variables. And sometimes it's obvious which is going to be which, and sometimes you really have to think about it because it does affect the analysis that you do. And the researcher is who defines which variable to be predictive. But remember, we're not trying to actually we're not doing the experimental design, we're not manipulating it, but we get to say which one we think is the independent variable versus which one we think is the dependent variable or criterion. Just different terms, same thing. We can do correlation coefficients, MANOVAs, that's we can do multiple regression. And again, that's, as I start talking about these things, make notes for yourself, make cheat sheets, start trying to, just remember the basics, at least, is what I recommend everybody do across the board. So you don't have to know how to run a MANOVA. Definitely you don't have to know how to do the actual, like old-fashioned crunching of numbers. You don't even have to know how, if you're using SPSS or SAS or R, you don't even have to know how you would run it, because to me, at least, for me, and those of you who want to go all the way into stats, that's fantastic. I have a lot of people who come out of my lab actually with masters in statistics at the same time, and I think it's incredibly strong. And I have ultimate respect. That's great. Not for me. So for me, remember that in front of the magic curtain, I just want to know when I'm doing associational work, I want to be able to say, often that could be correlational, MANOVA, and multiple regression. Then there's some other cheat sheets I'll give you this semester that will help you pick which one is most likely the best choice. I usually, at that point, just because I'm not a statistician, I will talk to a statistician and let them know, hey, here's my data, the variables and their characteristics, and this is what I'm planning on doing to answer my research question, or to look at this hypothesis. Am I doing it right? And then that's the kind of consult, because it can be as simple as an email. You've got if you work for a university, you've got access to a free statistician at all times. So send an email, double check, and then you can look up in today's world. You can not remember how to run a MANOVA, but remind yourself by watching a couple videos, right? And they will walk you through the buttons to push. And that's the fantastic part. So that's why I'm saying know which tests to run. You can figure out how to run them. And then the interpreting, that's the part that you have to spend a little bit more time, I think, and getting comfortable with. But after I've done my, run it, and then made my interpretation of what I think I'm seeing in the outcomes, I then send that email back to the statistician with a de-identified data set, and reminding that this was my research question or hypothesis, and here's the data, that the type of data I had, because they want to know type of data, So is it continuous? Is it, is it categorical? Is it, and here is here's what I found, and this is what I think I found. Then they can run that really quickly to confirm that I did it right, I interpreted it right. So I'm personally, if I'm not a statistician, I'm going to always do that double check with a statistician before I publish on something to make sure I didn't mess it up, if that makes sense. So the basics that I think everybody should have kind of a feel for is when you see a correlation coefficient in terms of interpreting it, we talk about the, +1 is a perfect positive relationship, and a plus -1 is going to be perfect negative relationship. So what do I mean by that? Where was I? Sam had already gone. Marissa, you're next. Marissa, give us an example of, and she might have stepped away. I don't know. We'll see. I'll give her another second. But give me an example of a perfect positive relationship. You've run some correlations. What's a example? Perfect positive. And just to give, so now hopefully everybody is scrambling to look it up because you don't remember who's next. But oh, yeah.
Hi, sorry, I did have to walk away, but I was listening.
Yeah, sorry.
Hours of work for total pay could be a.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, so explain a little bit more about the direction that would be. So
Yeah.
as your hours of work do what?
As your hours of work go up, they should go up by an hourly rate. $20
your pay goes up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's harder, but sorry, Meg, can you give me an example of a perfectly negative relationship? Or actually, even before you give the example, describe it, because we've said perfect positive means as this one goes up, this one goes up. So what does the perfect negative relationship mean?
As something decreases, another thing is going to decrease.
Ricky, can give us an example of the perfectly negative relationship? Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought it was the same thing that Meg did, and because I was going to say, if we decrease our intake of saturated fat intake, we will decrease our visceral fat in our body.
Okay, cool. Yep. So let's see if y'all can remember. So Rebecca, going back to Marissa's example. So this was the perfect positive or strong. This is one strong positive. But what are we seeing in this graph, so to speak? What
An increase?
Describe this. Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I jumped over to Rebecca because you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Nope. So you were fine. So Rebecca, putting Marissa's words onto what we're visually seeing here. Tell us again what we're seeing here. Like, what's the Y and the X axis? And does anybody have any tricks of the trade they use to remember which one's Y and which one's X?
Y has a long tail.
Nice. Okay, I like that.
That's
anybody else have another one?
The only way I know. That's like an L for left or left. I didn't even hold up my left hand.
Anybody else have anything that helps them remember which one's Y and which one's X? Okay. So that works. That's great. So I think I was asking Rebecca, gave her a minute to think. What were the two different things in Marissa's example?
Students who wait, no, am I
no the
jumping
perfect
timelines?
Perfect positive. Oh, that's not spelled right.
That's right.
That's funny. So Marissa, will you say again what your example was?
Yeah, the example was hours worked and total pay.
Yes. Okay. So what do we see here, Rebecca? And yeah, I'm not trying to trick you. It is this simple. What are we seeing happening here? Oh, you're muted.
What I see is y-axis keep increasing.
Uh-huh.
So,
And what's happening with the x-axis as it's going forward, as it's going, is what Marissa just told us. I promise I'm not trying to trick you. I know it seems too simple. Okay, Marissa.
I think the higher the hour, the higher the pay.
Yes, right. So as one's going up, the other one's going up. Correct. Yes. So let me go back up, and Bryce, you will be up next. So this is what it actually looks like when you have all these different data points, and they're plotted out on this, right? So you have your x and your y axis, and then you have your points. So when there's no relationship, nothing's there. There's no relationship between pay and hours worked. That'd be very depressing, right? Actually, that's very real for a lot of us. Okay. Anyway, it's going to be a near zero relationship. Is this just going to be dots everywhere, right? If you drew a circle around your dots, it's just they're everywhere. And then we talked about, okay, so now if there is a relationship there, it's not incredibly strong, but and actually now that I think about this, hours worked and pay, it's really not that strong, because there are plenty of people who have incredible pay but may work not anyway. That's just depressing. So it should be a relationship. But
I
if
was
it's
gonna say something about that. I'm like, in a perfect world,
yes,
that would
right.
be what we would want, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see a lot of women in this chat.
Yeah. Yes. We know it's not
And you, Bryce.
it's not a perfect relationship at all.
No, but in a
Okay.
perfect world, yeah, that would be.
Right. Right. So can Bryce, can you give me another example of um a weak something that might have a weak positive relationship?
Something that might have a weak positive relationship.
Yeah, just some example.
Not off the top of my head. I'm trying, but
That's okay. I'm gonna and my I know my I think it does change. I think it's when people turn off the camera and put it back, it puts you in a new place in line. So sorry, I'm just gonna stick with the line I see in front of me. So Sam, you're next. Can you come up with another example of a weak positive relationship?
And this might be wrong, but as I increase my mileage, the wear and tear on my shoes increases.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think that should have a relatively strong,
I guess my
I would
train of
think.
thought was like, your shoes are dead after like 300 to 500 miles, so it takes a long
Oh, and then
time.
you stop seeing. Yeah, okay, I can see that. And also that you at some point the wear stops. It probably, yeah, it's probably just anyway. Yeah. Okay. Um,
I have
all
one.
right. Okay, cool. What's yours?
The higher you grow, the higher your height, the bigger your age. I don't know if that works.
Right. No, as you age, your height goes up. That works for a while, right? um, but yeah. Eventually as adults that doesn't work anymore, right? Okay. So
Would like smoking cessation and cancer be a weak positive?
no, that's actually pretty strong.
And
But that's interesting because one of the
there's a
facts about
lot of
smoking,
like, other
well,
variables
right.
there.
No, the interesting thing about the smoking, although this is going to be sidetracked slightly, is that, and I'm making up these numbers, but they're generally right. Somebody can find the exact numbers for us. That it's something like 95% of people with lung cancer smoked, but only 15% of people who smoke end up with lung cancer.
Yeah, it's like
is
And we know that you can, but you won't, but it like cause, not correlation, you know.
well, it's that's more of an example of the genetic. That's why I said it's a sidetrack, because that's actually an example of the environmental and genetic interaction.
That
So
makes a lot of
that's
sense.
right. So if you have the genetic predisposition to having cancer and you add the smoking on, you are going to get cancer. 95, have a very, very high chance of getting cancer, but not everybody has that genetic predisposition. So
So
those people,
maybe would it more be everyone with cancer was a smoker? Like, would you turn it around? Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, and it was 95, but not everyone. Yeah.
But okay,
So
then like of the 15 instead of the 95.
right, but yeah, I mean that's kind of an example of how the stats could be misleading and not
Yeah,
explaining the story.
I don't want to
Um,
give a bad example and make us go too deep on that. It just was something that I like popped in my head.
right. So, and I can't remember what I think you gave us the example before of the perfect negative correlation, but I don't remember exactly what it is, because the thing is with the perfect negative is when they're moving in opposite directions. So it's like when
Mhm.
one thing is going to go up, um, then the other one is going to go down,
So
but
you
it's
could
still
say like the decrease of saturated fat consumption was increase of weight loss.
so as the weight went down, no, because in this case, in that case, it'd be as the weight went down, then the saturated fat went up, and that doesn't make sense. So
Or I
that's just
guess
not a good
vice
example.
versa is what I was trying to say, but maybe didn't.
Okay.
So if you eat less saturated fat, you would have an increase of weight loss.
I think one of the ones that we use often, especially when we talk about it not being caused, this is a good example we use for explaining the just because statistical association does not mean it could be a spurious relationship and it's not actually causal, is we talk about like temperature and winter jackets. So like as the temperature goes up, then the sales of the winter jackets are going to go down. Um, and so that could be um, a negative correlation. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Right. But it's not that, and often we talk about the opposite, where we talk about that as we talk about the positive, that as the well no still no, so as the temperature goes down, the jackets go up, the sales, but it's not that the increased sales of jackets cause the temperature to go down. You see how it could be interpreted wrong?
Hmm.
That's a spurious relationship. It's not, it's because it's cold, not because it's the temperature anyway. Basically that's what I was trying to show. We can go back into that a little bit more later because I still feel like it's a little confusing. So we'll probably go over that one again. But for sake of time, yep, I need to, because y'all need a break. Wow, I can talk forever. This is crazy. So there are different types of correlations that you can run. You can do the Pearson's R, Spearman-Rowe. And this is where it gets into the other things we were talking about today about the type of variables you have. You have to know what kind of variable. So when I was saying that you would tell the statistician what type of data you have, that this shows you how it's so important to know what type of data it has. So if you have two rank variables, you're going to be doing Spearman-Rowe for correlations. Whereas if you have a cardinal and a dichotomous variable, there's a different, you do point biserial, it's a different type of test you would run. So or if you have two ordinal variables, then you can choose between these three tests, right? So my point is that I don't expect everybody coming out with a graduate degree, master's or PhD, to know how to do all of these tests and all the ins and outs of interpreting them, but I would want you to know more about how to identify what kind of variable you have. Because to me, that's a more important first step to be able to figure out what kind of analysis you need to run. So, and we'll go into types of variables a little bit more. There are more complex correlations you can do. Factor analysis is one of my favorite personal. It's gonna, you're in an adorable dorky phase of life when you have your personal favorites of a statistical analysis, but that's my favorite. Does anybody else have a favorite statistical analysis they like doing? I hope you all end up with one. Ricky, do you have one you like most?
Well, I realized in my head you said statistical analysis, and I'm thinking observational, but it's not statistical
That's not.
necessarily.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
just thinking I like to people watch, so that's what
That's
initially came to
yeah,
mind.
it's more of it. Yeah, and that's more of a research design that you like. And they're definitely research designs that I really
Okay.
like survey. That's interesting. Anyway, um, it's clean. I don't know. Okay, it can be. So anyway, comparative means that you have at least two groups, right? You can have more than that. The what determines what group you're in is the independent variable, and then you can compare that outcome, the dependent variable, between those groups. So again, just knowing which kinds of tests you do when you're doing comparative work. So right now for you guys, as because we're gonna go back around to it in just a second, but if you were doing comparative and what you're about to present to class, is this the kind of stats you were thinking about doing? If not, jot it down because you might do a t-test or you might do an ANOVA or ANCOVA. Those would all be appropriate tests when you're doing comparative analysis. All right, so some cheat sheets that help you figure out which ones you're doing. The first type of thing to try to figure out whether or not you're doing an associational or correlational, same, or comparative or causal comparative. So it's kind of getting at cause, but not entirely. These are some things you can look at to help you figure out which one you're doing. If you only have one group, you're not doing comparative. Okay. That means you're going to be doing associational, correlational. So if you have two or more, comparative, causal comparative, same thing. So then you think about how many variables do I have and what kinds of variables. So I want you all to be thinking about the research you're going to be presenting in just a moment. Do you have two or more variables? Do you have maybe there are many predictor variables? Whereas in a comparative, so that would be associational, could be associational. Whereas in comparative, then you're going to have one independent variable that's going to be the difference between the groups, something that you're creating groups by, right? Because this is really the researcher putting it on there. And they may have more than two levels. You can have multiple levels. It could be because we're talking about hair color, right? Although that's not going to be an independent variable. Well, it could be, huh? Oh, okay, sorry. We could change everybody's hair color. But in that case, what I was saying is hair color could have multiple levels, right? So you have a variable as hair color, and then you can have multiple levels. And then you're going to have one or more dependent variable, so the outcome, which, yeah, anyway. So what do you, if we're changing hair color, by the way, that makes it experimental, not non-experimental. Different study. Okay, ask yourself, what are you looking at? If you're looking at how two things are associated or related to each other, it's an associational correlational study. If you're trying to figure out the differences between the groups, again, it's going to be a nice, easy, I'm trying to compare. Again, what does it identify? If it's about the relationships between variables, you're on the associational correlational side, but where you're trying to compare between groups, again, easy comparative. A little bit more complex. This has the same kind of thing where you're looking between descriptive, associational, comparative, quasi, or randomized. And I will publish these after today, and you can look at them later. We will come back to this as we move into the quasi and the randomized, but this helps you decide, do I have a descriptive, associational, comparative? So for today, right now, I want you to be looking at this and think about the study you're about to present and make sure it makes sense for what you thought it was. So if you said you were doing a descriptive study, make sure you had no groups, because you can still make changes before you present, by the way. Think about your research, making sure it fits with either descriptive, associational, or comparative using this table. And And then after you do that, think about your partners that you heard and make sure theirs makes sense. Okay, so now what I'm going to do now is let's take a 10-minute break. So turn off your camera, go walk around, biology break, all those good things. I'm going to leave up this here. When you come back in 10 minutes, I'm actually going to put you back in your group and you're going to talk about any changes that you need to make. I'm going to figure out a way to send this to you. I'll make it available to you to where you can pull it up while you're in your group and talk about it. So you won't have to, of course, you actually just could take a screenshot, can't you? Yeah, just take a quick screenshot of this, and that way you can pull it up yourself, and that way I don't have to do it. But anyway, so 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll break it again into the 10 minutes, and then you'll come back and you'll share. And yeah, we'll get done because I still have to do 2 more things. So 10-minute break. Bye.
Thank you.
Share. Okay. Go ahead and come on back. What we're going to do now is, and maybe for the sake of time, I'll make it 5 minutes if you think that's going to be enough. I'll probably check in with you guys and see if you need more time. So we'll start with 5 minutes. I'm going to put you back in your groups and just go back over what you had talked about before and what you're going to be presenting. I'm very Southern today. And so then after that 5 minutes of checking in, talking about any adjustments, then everybody will come back and go run through and present their research design. And you'll also present your paper that you're going to be presenting. So what you'll do is probably do the paper first and talk about the concepts there. Again, it's just a quick summary, let people know what you found, what you read, something interesting. And then, so I just saw Sam's talent for calculating a mean. That's pretty great.
Thank you.
As your
a lot
favorite.
of hard work.
So it's, we all have different talents. It's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up those rooms. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in just a little bit. And it should be open for you. Great. I will pause again. Resume recording. Okay. You missed out on the summary because I didn't hit record fast enough, but that's okay. Bryce is going to tell us about his research topic and what he decided to do.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I decided to do a correlational study in GLP-1 usage and bone density. So my research question was, is there any correlation between GLP-1 use that will affect bone density in adults? Hoping to find participants using semaglutide, tirzepatide, and other GLP-1 agonists, and similar to the other study, assessing both bone mineral density, fracture incidence, and also bone turnover. So the independent and dependent variables are pretty much the same. It would be the type of GLP-1 agonist would be the independent variable, and the dependent variable would be the total bone mass and also fracture incidence and bone turnover. So this would be a correlational study, hopefully comparing DEXA scans, fracture incidence, and again, bone turnover rate. For statistical design, I found that using a Pearson correlation and the Spearman rank order would go best with this structure.
Okay. Yeah. And so this study could very easily, or not easy because nothing's easy, but very feasibly be conducted, especially think about if you had access to medical records.
Yes.
So,
yes.
This would be a great study where you're not actually doing an experiment. You're not assigning anybody to GLPs. And then checking, because that would be different if you had participants that you recruited, and then you assigned them to two different groups, one that got GLPs and one that didn't. But the question is, so you would have all sorts of people in your study. Inclusion criteria would be they'd been treated with GLPs, and you'd be looking at their bone density. I guess some of the questions I might ask there, because the correlation. Talk to me about your independent variable is type of GLP, got it, and then the dependent variable is the bone mass. Nice. All right, so you'd be looking to see if you see different levels of bone mass, that if that varies based on the type of GLP. I like it. It's good. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts? It's very clean. Okay, cool. Very nice. Talk to me before we move on. With the correlation, tell me about why this is associational correlation as compared to comparative. What do y'all think?
I think it had to do to the amount of independent variables in this proposed study.
Okay. Because you have more than one you have more than one independent variable.
Right, just because with the amount of GLP-1
Right.
or GLP-1s out there, it would that would matter, I guess, with semaglutide and tirzepatide, among
Yeah.
others.
I guess what I'm trying to point out is that you can see how this is kind of the researcher's prerogative, so to speak, and that you can have the same data that you'd be accessing, and you could approach it as an associational study, or you could be presented as a comparative and having people in groups based on their GLP. So I'm just trying to point out how, gosh, I need a professional word besides loosey goosey, but how much of research is about making choices is what I'm trying to point out there. That you could approach this also as a comparative
Okay.
study. That's all I was trying to say. Okay, cool. All right. And the next person, my things are indifferent now. Okay, so Marissa, your turn.
Cool. So the article that I found is titled Examining Study Abroad Involvement, a Descriptive and Comparative Analysis of Agriculture Teaching Faculty.
Cool.
So as the title says, it's a descriptive and comparative study. It is purposed to understand the involvement of agricultural teaching faculty in study abroad, specifically looking at their involvement in study abroad, agreement with students' knowledge, skills, and abilities, the KAS outcomes, perceived importance of those outcomes, awareness of the opportunities, including scholarships, funding, perception of the institution and priority. The research design was descriptive and comparative. The dependent variables was the faculty involvement in student study abroad activities, their perceptions of the KSA outcomes, awareness of these policies. They took to sample, they used purposive sampling to select teaching faculty from both Louisiana State University and the University of Florida. Both are land-grant universities. Because this is non-experimental, the independent variables were not manipulated. The data was collected on an online Qualtrics survey, and descriptive statistics, including means, standard deviations, frequencies, and percentages, were used to describe the teaching faculty. And the one-way ANOVA was used to compare the groups. Overall, the faculty were generally somewhat involved in study abroad activities, primarily focusing on encouraging students to participate. They agreed that study abroad produces KAS outcomes and felt these outcomes were important for professionals, even though they're less convinced that the study abroad actually produces the outcomes rather than the outcomes being important. And the faculty were not very aware of funding and scholarships or the processes of transferring credits back to the home university. A couple limitations: that the study only included 2 universities, and it was a smaller sample size and an unequal between both universities. So there's a larger at one than the other.
That's a really nice one for your dissertation work, to have that in there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. So present us your research.
Perfect. I can do share. Oops. Okay. Are you guys seeing my slide?
Yep, sure.
Okay, so the research question is that are there differences in diet quality between undergraduate students who have participated in the study abroad program and those who have not? It's a non-experimental comparative cross-sectional design. No, the data will be collected at a single time point since it's cross-sectional. The independent variable is participation in the study abroad program, and there'll be 2 levels: those who have studied abroad and those who have not. The dependent variable will be self-reported diet quality. This other outcomes collected will be food attitudes, willingness to try new foods, perceived changes in eating habits, and these will help provide a broader understanding of how these might be associated. But the sample will consist of undergraduate students, those who have participated in the study abroad program within the past 2 years, and those who have not. Individual students will serve as a unit of analysis. We'll also be collecting demographics, including age, gender, academic year, socioeconomic status, and length of time abroad. Other confounding variables such as prior travel experience, interest in international foods, and pre-existing dietary habits like food allergies and intolerance will also be collected, as they could influence the outcome. And data analysis will begin with descriptive statistics to summarize participant demographics and the survey response. And then an independent sample t-test will be used to compare average diet quality scores between the 2 groups. We'll be doing all the things statistically prior, like measuring for outliers, normality, and a power analysis will be conducted to estimate the sample size.
So a question for you to think about, but you don't have to answer today, is making the, if you'll have to remind me to come back to it, but making the decision between doing a t-test. Sorry, no, I'm challenging you a little bit further than others, but why you would do a t-test. First of all, and talk about the difference between independent and dependent, but then versus an ANOVA or ANCOVA. So next time you'll mention that, as long as I remember, or you remind me. All right, great. Anybody have questions on Marissa's? All right. And next is going to be Sam.
Alrighty. So my paper is titled Evolution Acceptance, Literacy, and Knowledge Acquisition Among Online Manosphere Communities, an Exploratory Survey Study. Just a quick justification, because looks maxing is such a new and emerging phenomenon, there is a tiny bit of qualitative work being done, but there is a significant gap in the literature about quantitative empirical research. So I decided to just broaden my topic a tiny bit to look at the manosphere as a whole, because looks maxing is a subculture of the larger manosphere, which is a culture that promotes like strict definitions of masculinity. And if we can understand how people in this subculture and larger culture interpret and decipher scientific information, hopefully we can better understand how looks maxing has been adopted and gained traction. So anyway, so the researchers asked 3 research questions. The first was, how scientifically literate are people in the manosphere? Second was, how do people in the manosphere acquire and share scientific knowledge? And the third one was, how do manosphere scientific literacy and knowledge acquisition patterns differ from those of a general U.S. population sample, which makes the study comparative and a cross-sectional study. The survey was administered to a group of self-identified Manospherians and a just group of general U.S. population sample. The independent variable is going to be group membership, so Manosphere versus their counterpart participants. The dependent variable was the scientific literacy score. This was done with convenient sampling online because this is a hard-to-reach population, so doing some sort of probability sampling is going to be like really difficult to like nearly impossible. Participants were recruited online through things like Discord, Reddit, X, and they collected survey responses from a 20-part multiple choice questionnaire with 5 different topic areas. Statistics that were used were descriptive statistics on like age, sex, education level. Independent samples t-tests were used and showed a significant difference between mean scores of Manospherians versus their comparison group. They also used chi-squares to show evolution acceptance differences between the groups. And lastly, they did a regression because they wanted to determine whether group membership remained associated with scientific literacy after controlling for possible like confounding, including like age, gender, number of science classes they'd taken. Overall, they found that people in the manosphere do show higher levels of scientific literacy and do seem to accept evolution more than the comparison group, but they do display several misconceptions regarding evolutionary theory. The researchers hypothesize that these misconceptions may be linked more so to some sort of ideological or political agenda instead of a true lack of scientific understanding. Some quick limitations were that this study came out before open use of AI, so that may definitely play a role in how scientific knowledge is gained. There was self-selection bias because participants chose whether to participate or not. And the survey was pitched as a way to test your scientific knowledge, so they may come into it kind of more like at stake. Lastly, this group is a very difficult population to reach. There's a lot of resistance to outsiders and a lot of hostility. The researchers even received a death threat in the process of this study. So overall, I thought it was super interesting. I think we can apply this more to kind of my topic if we have a better understanding of this concept. And that leads me to my study. Let me share my screen.
I just heard more new words that I've not heard before that I in the shortest period of time that I
I
can
keep
remember.
you on your toes,
I
of
don't
course.
think any of us have ever heard Manospherians. I know Marissa and I both were taken aback.
That's
Yes.
yeah, it's really fascinating. It's pretty
Thank
cool.
you. I love to keep everyone on their toes. So this is my proposed design. It's pretty similar, honestly, to the article that I did find. This guy right here is named Clavicular. He is an online presence that really like spearheads the whole Looks Maxing movement. And I already kind of laid the groundwork for what this is, so I'll skip over this. So the proposed design, again, we went over my research question, which definitely we can expand upon or tweak. But overall, we're just asking, how does body image differ between young men that are engaging in looks maxing versus just young men that participate in online fitness culture? The independent variable, again, would be group membership, and the dependent variable here would be body image. Methods, it would be the creation of an online questionnaire that assesses beliefs using the validated survey instrument, singular, which will be looking at body image. I found a questionnaire. I'm still like a newbie to finding questionnaires about my interest, but I found this one that I believe they rate statements on that ask them questions about like how they feel about their body, their relationship with their body. This again would be online recruitment because this is an online phenomenon. And then some data analysis techniques I would do. I would try to gather descriptive statistics again for demographics, run independent samples t-tests for those questionnaire items to compare means between the two groups, and also do some sort of regression again to try to control for some confounding variables. A few challenges I thought about was just, again, I would feel like I would need to narrow down what really counts as like identification with a fitness or gym group on social media. So there would need to be pretty strict or like rigorous inclusion exclusion criteria. And then, like I said, this group is like pretty difficult to reach or gain their trust, so it may be difficult to find participants. But that's all.
Very cool. That's very cool. And I think, will you go back to your slide, the second to last? I just wanted to try to say this coherently. I think this is a cool thought experiment in how I was talking about that the researcher gets to make so many decisions in this kind of work, because when you think about the independent variable and the dependent variable, you can see how fluid that could be, in that is body image actually the outcome, or could that actually be the cause for the group affiliation? Because
Oh
it
my
does.
God, that's such a good point.
No, that you didn't do it wrong. That's
No,
what
but
I'm
that's
saying.
so interesting though, that like you
Right.
just said that. I was like,
Right. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the really, I think that's the fun part about this research, and what you can do is that you do get to like think about, how does the world work? What do we think's happening? Because the only reason why in this case it would matter is slightly is that it can make a difference in the statistical analysis that you do, because you have to tell the system, which is your independent variable, which one's your dependent variable for a lot of tests. And so it can change based on the way you set it up. That's all. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah,
Any other
no, I love
thoughts? Yeah, it's cool. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, it's gonna be cool to get to hear about this semester. I would love it. Okay, Mamoon, you are up next.
Okay, so the paper I reviewed is titled Association of Mediterranean Diet with Sleep Quality, Depression, Anxiety, Stress, and Body Mass Index in University Students. It's actually a recent paper published in 2025. So the researcher wanted to answer two questions. How well do university students follow the Mediterranean diet? And is Mediterranean diet adherence associated with sleep quality, depression, anxiety, stress, and BMI? So it's a cross-sectional study, non-experimental observational design. Also, I think it tried to find like correlation between the variables. The participants were from a university in Turkey. There were 750 students participated in the study. The participation was volunteered, so it's a convenience sampling. The independent variable was Mediterranean diet adherence, which they measured by using KID-MED scale. And the dependent variables were sleep quality, depression, anxiety, stress, and body mass index. The researcher uses validated questionnaire like KID-MED for Mediterranean diet adherence, DASS42 for depression, anxiety, and stress, PSQI, Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index for sleep quality, and the BMI was calculated from self-reported height and weight. The statistical analysis included descriptive statistics, chi-square test, independent t-test, one-way ANOVA, Pearson correlation, and multiple linear regression. The main findings from this study was about 59% of students had poor Mediterranean diet adherence, and better diet adherence was associated with lower depression, lower stress, and better sleep quality among the females. However, after adjusting for smoking and alcohol use, these associations are no longer statistically significant. The limitation was it's sort of cross-sectional study, so we can determine the cause and effect. The student came only from one university, so there is a sampling bias. The height and weight were self-reported, so it is also biased. And there are only a few obese participants in the study, and there are no exclusion criteria, like they included pregnancy, lactating women also in the study. So it's I think, huge limitation of the study.
Excellent. So some of the things that I want to point out, and then we'll move quick because I know we're running out of time, is that first of all, as you look through this work, some of the things that you pull out, hopefully, when it's related to the work you're going to be doing, is like, what tools do they use? So making maybe even files for yourself where you just jot down different names of tools as you run into them, and maybe a note or two about about the tool, then a reference is always great, so you can find it again easy. But those are the kinds of things that you want to pull out and start making notes for yourself. Other things that you can pull out and almost make a table. It's kind of like, think of it as doing like a systematic review, but just for your own use, right? So that you would note like the research design, what they did and what they found. So that way you can go back through quickly later and decide what to pull into, an introduction and, section for a paper or, your chapters. So start keeping track of, maybe even set it up in Covidence. It would be interesting if you can, to where it keeps track for you, that helps you keep that organized so you can get to it later. It's just a thought, but I would probably just be using Word at a table to do that. And there was something else, but I don't remember what it was. So that was good. Also, like in that table, I definitely would like make notes of what statistical analysis people do. So that way you can, as you're deciding what kind of stats to run in your work, you'll be able to justify, see what other people have done and then decide what you're going to do. Okay, moving on to yours.
Okay. Can you see the slide?
Sure can. Yep.
Thank you. So I kind of did a similar study design. I tried to remove all the biases and also try to make it more simple. So my title is Association between Mediterranean Diet Adherence and Depressive Symptoms among college students.
Okay.
And the research question is higher adherence to a college-adapted Mediterranean diet associated with lower depressive symptoms severity among college students? My research design it's a cross-sectional study, it's a correlational study, and obviously non-experimental design. And the participant will be from college, like University of Tennessee, the undergraduate student. We will collect the participant from by through campus emails, student health services, flyers, and other media. It will be a convenience sampling method to make it simple. The participant will be 18 years or older than that. And as it's a non-experimental design, the participant will not be assigned in any groups like the control or intervention group. My independent variable will be Mediterranean diet adherence, which will be measured by MEDAS questionnaire, Mediterranean diet adherence Skinner questionnaire, which is a highly used scale in this field. And the dependent variable will be depressive symptom severity scale, measured by PHQ-9 questionnaire, which is a self administered, so the participant can administer by themselves, so it will be easy to collect the data. My control variables will be age, sex, race, ethnicity, physical activity, and sleep quality. And the data collection will be done at one time through a face-to-face interview, as it's a cross-sectional study, and the participant will give information on MEDAS questionnaire, PSQ-9, and demographic questionnaire. And no treatment or dietary counseling will be provided during the study. The statistical analysis will be done on finding out the frequency, the mean, median, like the normal non-experimental study. Also the normality outliers. Depending on the data distribution will be assessed by using Pearson correlation if the data is normally distributed, and if multiple linear regression will be examined whether Mediterranean diet adherence predict depressive symptoms while controlling the age, sex, race, ethnicity, physical activity, and sleep quality. And chi-square test and independent t-test may also be used for group comparison.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I want to point out, I know we're at time, is that these are the types of studies that you're looking for. If you are trying to do an intervention, you want ideally to build that intervention obviously off of previous research. And so if you've got previous research that looks at, it's kind of the first step, you want somebody to look at that, the non-experimental design where we're looking at the associations or the correlations, so that you've seen that there's an association now. If you see that in previous work, and it makes sense now to create an intervention where you actually see if you apply that, do you still get the same kind of changes and outcomes? So it really, you're looking for those kinds of studies to have in your review to justify moving on to your next step for an intervention is very important. So that's really great. And then, like you said, keeping track of the different tools that are often used. The other thing, last thing that I'll say there is that when you're designing an intervention, you want to, sometimes it's good to look at it kind of opposite, that you look at your tools first and you see what they're assessing, and you make sure those are things that you're actually intervening on. Because if you end up with a mismatch between the assessments you're using and what's happening during the intervention, then you're not necessarily going to see the actual outcomes of the intervention, just because there's not a good match there between the assessment and the intervention. So looking backwards is often very helpful to make sure what you're assessing is what you're going to be intervening on. Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's going to put us like a few minutes over. We can either just keep going for like 10 minutes and wrap up today, if that's okay with you guys, or we can have our last two going. Megan, Ricky can go next Thursday. Does anybody need to run, or can I steal 10 minutes of your time? Okay, thanks. All right, Meg, you're next. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Sorry, I'll try to be better, staying on top of it.
Okay. My research, well, the article that I found was a comparative research design about culture, comparative study on the motivations for online identity reconstruction between China and Malaysia. Not really much to do with my topic of interest, but it was interesting to me. And I was in a breakout room with Sam, and it's kind of along the vibes of what Sam is interested in. So this is about like just the different cultural concerns between a few things that I will go over. The research objective was to build on the research concerning online identity reconstruction by taking account into national culture, seeing if that plays an impact on what people's priorities are when it comes to the online identity. It was a cross-sectional, quantitative, comparative study design. Its independent variables were the nature and culture of origin, so China and Malaysia. Dependent variables were motivation for online identity reconstruction, specifically physical vanity, achievement vanity, bridging social capital, benign disposition, toxic disposition, and privacy concerns. So those are the things they were looking for. It was convenience sampling through an online survey. It had 815 respondents, and they were both posted to Chinese or Malaysian platforms. They used a self-report questionnaire. They use conformatory factor analysis um, to analyze the data, as well as discriminate validity, Harman single factor test, and comment latent, sorry. Factor. And what they found was that they had a few hypotheses. Malaysians are more motivated by physical vanity. Chinese are more motivated by bridging social capital. The Chinese are more motivated by benign disposition. They're also more motivated by toxic disposition, and Malaysians are more motivated by privacy concerns. Social capital was the single most important thing for Chinese participants, and privacy concerns ranked the highest for Malaysian participants. And then the limitations was that convenience sampling limits generalizability, and non-response rates could not be tracked. Self-reports introduce potential social desirability bias, I think especially in a topic like this. And they also used an English-only questionnaire for the Malaysian population, which may have limited response quality for those whose first language is not English. The reason they chose to use an English questionnaire is because English is the second most common language spoken there. But that was a limitation because, I mean, just because it's the second most common doesn't mean that people, they didn't say whether like how well spoken you had to be in English to take the exam, if that to fill out the questionnaire. And then I will share my screen. I didn't know how like presentation style this was gonna be for my comparative research design that I did, so it looks really long, but it's just because I had to put like a few words on each slide. So Sorry, everyone. Let me
You're good.
share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
So my topic of interest is e-health applications impact on athletes' diet quality. I did a comparative design research summary, which I'm going to skip. So this is carried out through athletic departments, training centers, and online platforms reaching athletes. I did have it's through some surveys that require the athletes to recall their diet from 4 weeks for the past 4 weeks, but I'm thinking that's bad because diet recall is really hard. So instead of doing one dietary recall survey like once for 4 weeks, I'm thinking about I would change it to one every week for 4 weeks to make it a little easier. Um, so it was also I changed that because ignore that. Active athletes 14 to 26 and I changed that. It was just 14. Sorry, did a lot of things I didn't check. Reason I did this was because, and I said in my group, the age of elite athletes is getting younger. Like you can have competitive swimmers, tennis players, golfers who are very young gymnasts. And so, especially through that age, dietary quality is really important for growth. Just with a lot of like gymnasts, like I think especially being stunted because they engage in high levels of activity so young, definitely want to keep an eye on their diet. So they would need to be training at least 8 hours a week. And I was hoping for a sample of 200 sorted into naturally occurring high use e-health people, 50 moderate people, and 100 athletes who do not use it. So it's purposive and snowball. Inclusion, kind of just went over that. Exclusion, if you use e-health for non-data related. If you're just using it to track your training, you're not included in the study.
Okay.
Research instruments, I would collect demographic information, classification of athlete type, frequency, duration, and how often they use eHealth. And then that would naturally sort high use into 5 days a week for at least 2 months, moderate 3 to 4 days, 2 months, and non-users, people who just don't use eHealth. And then, so evaluate their diet. I would use the Athlete Diet Index, which was developed in Australia for elite athletes, and it analyzes athletes specifically instead of using a generalized diet index because the needs of athletes are higher, even though differing in age, the needs are still like protein needs would still be higher than the general population, even though the RDA for protein did change. So I actually don't know how different it would be now. It's a little higher, but that is just how the things that it would look for in that. There'd also be a dietary baseline, nutrition knowledge questionnaire, just to control for potential confounding effects on diet quality scores, shown as a percentage. And this is all the assessments that each group would do. So they would do the demographic and athlete profile. We'd collect the base, like age, weight, height, athlete type, their e-health usage, which would then sort them into the naturally occurring groups, the nutritional quality assessment, which just for baseline, and then the ADI, which is the athlete dietary index. My hypothesis was that athletes who use e-health applications will score significantly higher on the athlete dietary index than athletes do not. And then the null hypothesis was that there will be no significant difference. Data analysis. I'm currently using SPSS statistics for my stats class that I'm in, so I figured I would use that. Descriptive statistics describing the sample characteristics, a one-way ANOVA, and COVA, and then multiple linear regression to determine the predictive effect of eHealth on ADI scores. Interpretation results, eHealth. I cannot say that eHealth causes better diet quality because of the study design, but I can say there may be a statistically significant difference. That's it. Sorry, it was
No,
so
that's
many
great.
slides. I will
No,
condense
no,
it.
I like no. Whatever works, everybody can do it the way that works best for them. And sometimes pulling it out is nice on that way. So, questions for Meg? I really like the the interpretation of the results, you can speak to limitations is what you kind of frame those as. That's really good. Yeah. Okay, cool. So last but not least is Ricky.
Hello. So I went with, like you had mentioned, some of the previous work we've done. So my big focus is food insecurity. So I found a study that the purpose was to estimate how common food insecurity among graduate students associates with things like depression, anxiety, and stress. This study was cross-sectional, an online survey that they conducted at a large Northeastern university. It was measuring mostly U.S. household food insecurity and the effects of depression, anxiety, and to something that they had a stress scale. There were 263 participants, and they had a high, low, and very low food security, not to be confused.
Right.
But it ended up being about 40% of the graduates in this sample were food insecure. So roughly half, but we see in the literature there's a lot of bias and just preconceived notion of why that surveying and self-reporting cannot always be consistent. So students with very low security reported significantly higher scores for depression, anxiety, and stress. So food insecurity we see directly linked to the outcome that these students were having in school. I'm looking for my specific. I was not wanting to pull too much up on my computer so that I could
Right.
share my screen. Okay. So I can share real quick. I'm trying to do it quickly so that
You're
I don't
fine.
have.
I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I mean, I'm not worried.
I
Okay.
think as you pull that up, I'm going to say just to the group that it's interesting because a way that you could, so if you find an association, but you don't know the direction that we're talking about, like you get to choose which causes which, right? Think about you could design in a perfect world with lots of funding and all this. You could design an intervention where you intervene on depression, and you look to see if food security changes, and another one where you intervene on food security to see if depression changes. And that way you could find out what's the actual direction of that relationship.
I love that idea, and it kind of goes with the same fact. I thought this was really interesting to see how food insecurity affects specifically things like depression, anxiety, and stress. It's like I was just looking in a mirror as I was reading this,
Right.
article, but I've always heard it just as food insecurity and its effects, not that kind of pinpointed, more targeted. You know, study. So this kind of mock design that I was kind of playing around with, it would be a non-experimental study designed for us at UT. So food insecurity again affects, our academic success, and these things are seen to be directly correlated. The purpose of the study was to address the level of food insecurity and its effects on the students at UT. So we would be asking questions. Sorry, I can't see because of our little videos. We'd be asking questions like what percent of graduate students experience, and using the same scale, high, marginal, low, very low. What are average depression, anxiety, and stress scores of the sample? So regardless of security status, what does that even look like at UT with things like emotional well-being? And then what demographic characteristics are most common among these participants? And I'm just a product of what I'm interested in and can attest that it's typically those lower socioeconomic households. I'm a first generation, put myself in about $60,000 worth of debt, college student. So I definitely grew up dependent on programs that kept kids fed. That's why my passion in our breakout rooms, Rebecca was like, "Oh, I hear you talk about this every time I see you, Ricky." And not in a bad way. It's just,
No, yeah,
I
it's
say
good.
community refrigerators and
Passion.
everyone knows it's me.
Yeah.
But this, I thought the non-experimental and experimental that you were kind of giving us this better idea of was really helpful today. So it would be graduate students enrolled, current master's or doctoral students. Our primary variable, our dependent, or I'm sorry, our independent variable is active, and it would be food security status. We
Well, now,
see,
when we say active, that means it's actively manipulated, and it would not be. This would be attribute if it's
okay,
because you're not
sorry.
going to assign somebody to food
No,
security
you're
status.
right.
So
No investigator control.
yeah, yes,
Correct.
no
Okay, yeah,
assigning
yeah.
of food insecurity.
I was reading my wrong notes from class. Sorry,
No,
they're
you're fine. I was
I'm
just
trying to show you.
yeah.
So independent variable would be this food security, and then like we were talking about, the dependent variables in this being specifically depression, anxiety, and stress measured by this score of some sort. Seeing those demographics are a little variable because variables. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, it's the end of class. Because at a college we see at different ages, different, ethnicities, gender, all types of people. Um, so limitations again is something I had mentioned. So this bias, and we see this. I think I'm not sure if I'm the only kind of clinical background person coming in, but I'm definitely more of the world of community nutrition. And I grew up as a sick kid and learned how to work the healthcare system my whole life. And so seeing those biases, those biases, uh, of both myself and practitioners. And so trying to kind of navigate a little clearer idea of what's affecting mental health and food with kids.
Right. Nice. This is excellent. And I realized actually, as you said, Rebecca, that Rebecca did not get back around to you. I do think for the sake of time and see what you're gonna, and hopefully you've already seen that like with next week, since we're gonna be working on experimental design, you can even, and maybe we'll even start with Ricky if I remember, because what we can do is we can look from here and it's going to flow really nicely into, okay, well, the next layer you can do, you go from here to grow it into an experimental design, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I
That will
think
tie it up.
I think we all feel a little more comfy knowing what you
What it's going to be. Yeah, it'll be
and I were both like, you know.
right.
Um
I don't know what this looks like. Yeah.
no, I think it was great advice though. Work on what you already have and that will be
Mhm.
beneficial for you, because this is literally something I can take out of this class and use. So
Excellent. That is exactly what I'm looking for. So yeah, Rebecca, we'll start. I may start with Ricky just for that continuity, and then we'll roll into you.
Yeah.
So you're actually going to go ahead and do all of yours together, and I think it will roll fine. I did go
Okay,
ahead and put the
thank you.
recordings. I did put the recordings on Canvas already, so you can get to those recordings from the other lectures if you're interested in hearing them. The other thing to let you know that I'll start with next time, so you get a heads up, and I will share screen for just a second to cheat to show you what I will be asking you to do. Let's see if I can find it. I know I put it together. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys, you're going to be filling out your exam. So we'll do a quick thing where I'll be rolling through names and definitions of things that you wrote down. So just be prepared. I might change the order so they have different names. For those of you paying attention, I don't want you to only pay attention to the ones you're doing, but that's what I would be doing at the beginning of a class next time. So that way we tie each previous class in with as we roll forward, if that makes sense. So I think that's all. And if you haven't turned things online already, go ahead and please do so. And then let me know if you have any questions. And Rebecca, I'll stay on to talk to you about scheduling. But thank you guys. Sorry it ran over.
Oh no, thank you.